Okay, so today I'm going to show you how to replace your coil pads, or it's also referred to as an ignition module. Now, I am in no way a car person. I can strip a computer down to its bare bones, but when it comes to cars, well, I'm not fantastic. But this is such an easy job to do. I'm going to show you how to do it and save a bucket load of money. So originally I took it to the mechanic, and this is after I had a full service done, but I noticed when I was hitting around between 90 and 110 kilometers an hour on the freeway or the highway. Now, it was fine when I was at a constant speed, but when I had to put it under a bit of pressure to get up to the actual speed limit, I noticed a lot of stuttering, and that's a major concern. So after I had a full service done, I took it back to the same guys because I'm thinking, well, I just had a service done, so why am I having these issues? So the first thing he did was he checked this part here. Now that's the air intake. That's the filter, and under here he took this off. He put a bit of carb cleaner in there. He said it was a bit dirty, so that could have been one of the two problems. So he gave it a good clean out, didn't charge me anything extra, which is good. And he said if that didn't work, then it's definitely the ignition modules or the coils. Now, it's hard to tell which one it is unless you replace one, go to the freeway, test it out. If it doesn't work, well, then you go to the next one, which is kind of pointless because once one fails, sooner or later, more sooner honestly than later, the next one's going to fail than the next one. So it's really one of those jobs where you just want to replace all three, and then you've got a full new set and it's done, and you don't have to worry about it for years to come. Now, my biggest issue was he wanted to charge me $180 to replace all three. Now, keep in mind, I'm talking Australian here, so $180 Australian, but I was able to pick these up at my local car place here in Australia called Peps, but there's so many places, Autobarn, all those different type of car part places. And I was able to pick up all three for $70. So imagine that. He wanted to charge me $180 for such a simple job when I could do it myself, and I'm not a car person, for $70. So that's less than half price for such a simple job. Now, the ignition module of your vehicle is the heart of your entire ignition system. Its two main roles are to create a spark strong enough to ignite the air-fuel mixture for combustion, and to control the timing of the spark plugs by opening and closing the ignition module ground circuit. The ignition module has a direct impact on the performance of the engine, so that's why they're so important. Now, keep in mind, they don't all look the same. It depends on the model, but they all work exactly the same. So one of the symptoms, if your vehicle stalls unexpectedly during operation and will not start again, it is likely because of a loose or corroded electrical connections in the ignition module. Now, you'll see more issues when they're overheating, especially like, for example, when I was on the highway. When they're overheating, they'll soon completely cease to function, and in the meantime can cause electrical shorts, engine stuttering, which is exactly what I had, and it also lowers the gas or petrol mileage. So first things first, we're going to make sure we only do one at a time, otherwise you can really screw things up. So I'm going to remove the first spark plug lead. So make sure you don't get these mixed up. So the left one on this side, and we're going to remove the right one and just wrap it somewhere around so it doesn't get mixed up. You don't want to obviously have them on, put them back on the wrong side. So just simply get a ratchet, just make sure you've sized it up to the bolt that you're using, and we're just going to just loosen that up like so. Now, don't go all the way, we'll just do one at a time. Don't loosen one completely up, because there are parts inside that aren't part of the ignition module that we don't want to break, which I'll show you in a second. And don't lose these screws, because these screws are the ones we'll be using to affix the new ones on. So this part's definitely very easy. So easy, there's only two bolts or screws holding this thing on. Okay, so once they're completely off or unscrewed, just carefully lift it up. You'll feel a bit of tension on one side, that's where the circuits are. And that's all you have to do. See, it's all lifted up. So this is why you want to be careful, because the two things here, I'll just call them electrodes, as I said, not a car person, they are actually part of the unit itself. So if you break those off, well, then you've got an expensive trip to the mechanic. So it turns something very simple and cheap to do by yourself into something expensive. So be very careful when lifting and putting this module back on. Okay, so here we have a brand new ignition module. Now this one's a bit different. This one doesn't have the numbers. It's really, honestly, makes no difference whatsoever. As long as you got left, you got right. It only goes in one way, so you can't mess it up. Okay, so using the same bolts that we took off the old one, we're just going to place those in first. This will just help to put it down in the right section. As you can see, this is the part where the two electrode type thingies go in. So using the screws, bolts as a guide, we're just going to carefully put it in and just sort of wiggle it a little bit, not too much because you don't want to break anything. Just so they just slide right in, just like that. And it's now perfectly snug. So now it's just a simple matter of screwing in our bolts. So we don't want to tighten one all the way and then screw the second one in. You want to do one, say 3/4 of the way, then the second one. That way you just get an even pressure. So once it's sort of finger tight, then go back to this one. This way you're not tightening anything so it's uneven. You don't want to over tighten it, otherwise you're going to break something. Just enough so you're not having to use an excessive amount of pressure. You just want it in there nice and snug. So I'm not using too much pressure here, so be very careful. So just so it's snug on there, and it's snug on there, and of course make sure we're using the right leads. So we just basically just plug that back on, and that goes in the same spot, and that's how we do it. It is so simple to do yourself, and you're saving so much money. So all you have to do now is just replace the other two coils. Okay, so once done, just make sure all of our leads are on securely in case we accidentally loosened one up during the changing of the modules. Now how easy is that? It is literally a 10-minute job to do, and I've just saved $110. Now again, if you're not sure about anything, I highly recommend that you go to a qualified mechanic. Now if you're sure it's the coils that need replacing and they want to book you in to get it done, just say, you'll get back to them because you work out your finances, and literally just do it yourself because it is so simple and so cheap. And now the moment of truth. Let's just make sure the car starts up. Oh, and there we go. No issues whatsoever. She works perfectly, starts, no problem. Revs fine, all good. So there we go, I've fixed the problem, cost me less than half the price, saved a bucket load of money, and my car is now back to full working order. So thank you for watching this episode of Home Handy Hints. Please do me a huge favour and subscribe for more, and check out some of my other Home Handy Hints videos by tapping on screen, and I'll see you next time for another Home Handy Hint.